and welcome. Welcome to the Blessed Podcast, where we join Jesus where he is already at work, where we live, learn, work, and play. At Love KC, we believe that every person should hear the good news of Jesus from a friend. If that's going to happen, it will take all of us. The letters BLESS in the Blessed Podcast stand for begin with prayer, listen to God and to those around you, eat together, serve, and share. Share your story and share his story. As always, we have free resources to help you live on mission at our website, lovekc.net, and there you can find upcoming events. We interview a wide range of people on the Blessed Podcast, well-known authors, speakers, and leaders, plus everyday people, because we want you to meet those you might not get to meet on your own, and we want you to be able to identify with someone a lot like you. Our podcasts drop the 15th and 30th of the month. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe and share. Now let's jump into this episode of the Blessed Podcast with your host, Gary Kendall, and co-host, Samantha Lane Krebs.
Well, welcome to the Blessed Podcast, where we join Jesus where he's already at work, where we live, learn, work, and play. And on the Blessed Podcast, we invite people from Kansas City and beyond to share how they use their gifts and their calling in the everyday life that God's allowed us to live, and how some of those turn into ministries and some turn into just our everyday work life. God uses it all to bring himself glory. And today, it's my privilege to have Ray Jarrett on from Unite KC. Welcome, Ray. So glad that you're here.
Hello. Thank you.
Yeah, we look forward to interviewing Ray today. And then I want to you guys who are listening to pass these on. You can find the Blessed Podcast on YouTube. You can find it on Apple Play and Google Play. Anywhere that there's a platform for podcasts, you can find it. And we encourage you to share it so that all of us can live on mission. Well, Ray, this has been a very eventful last 10 or 11 days as we've led into this tragedy that took place at Union Station. And all of us in Kansas City are grieving over that. It's a heavy blanket over such a big celebration. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts from like the parade into hearing about the shooting, and what were you thinking and feeling as that was all unfolding?
Well, it was pretty, and I hate to overuse the word surreal, but you're sitting there and you're watching something that is at the height of celebratory things, and you're having all these good thoughts, and you're just happy for the city and happy for the players and stuff. And then all of a sudden we hear this breaking news story, and it was just really shocking. I just couldn't believe it, and I didn't know where, you wonder where and what's going on and different things like that. So shocked is an understatement. Just saddened. I remember I was watching it with some friends, and we immediately bowed our head and just said a prayer and everything, hoping that it wouldn't be horrible and bad. But it turns out there was certainly a low moment for our city.
Yeah. I think these two things will always be connected. The back-to-back celebration, the parade, and the stage at Union Station, and then the shooting. And as long as we think of one, we'll probably think of the other. And I guess one of my prayers as this was unfolding, was that God would show us how to respond. I actually was coming out of a funeral. I had been leading a funeral and had just finished the funeral and had gotten home and was just walking in the house with my suit on when I heard the news. Belinda actually texted me and said, "Did you hear?" And so I quickly got to, I just started looking up Twitter, and I figured that was the fastest way to find the news these days. And it all unfolded there. And then I went to bed that night with just a heavy heart and woke up early the next morning at 5:30. And I was, as I was getting out of bed and was just praying about the day, I just had this strong feeling like the church should respond. Like there should be some response from the church. I know I don't speak for the Big C Church, but I began to think, well, I wonder what we could do. And so I texted about 15 people that I knew. You were one of them.
Yes.
Actually, you were one of the first two. And I was just thinking, if anyone could figure this out, probably these 15 or 16 people could do it collectively. And to my great surprise and happiness, people started responding immediately. I mean, it was within seconds. And that group basically texted back and forth all day till about 10 p.m. that night.
That's
And
right.
I was just really thrilled to see the way that group came together collectively. What were you thinking when you were reading those texts and that was kind of unfolding in front of you?
Well, I mean, if I go back to the point you were at, which was just going to bed that night with a really heavy heart, because by then we found out that one person had died, Lisa,
right.
And the number just kept going up, as you remember.
Right.
Every time we got a news report, it was more people. So when I woke up early the next day and saw that there was a movement afoot, like I said, I got your message, heard from Jimmy Dodd, of course, and so many other people that just jumped right in. It reminded me of what I've been saying all along. I got to hear it and see it for myself, that Kansas City is a special place. And the church leaders, nobody wanted credit. Nobody wanted to have their name out front. It was just wonderful, Gary. And it was a long day. That was certainly a long day, but it was a day filled with activity. It was a day where we were able to show the church, show the city how much the church loved them.
Right. Yeah. It was gratifying to see people collaborating at the level they were. One person sharing an idea and then being willing to resend that idea if a better idea came across.
Right.
And one of the very first ideas was Jimmy's idea when Jimmy Dodd reached out and said, "Hey, Gary, I think that something similar happened years ago in Florida, where at an airport, several people were shot and killed." And he said, "I have a friend named Eddie Copeland who's in Florida." And he said, "Why don't we get on a phone call and talk to Eddie?" So this is like 7:30 now. And so called Eddie. He's at a gym working out, but he took the call and he said, "Oh yeah, let me tell you what we did." And then he kind of gave us the points that we then relayed back to the group, and the group accepted them, which was first of all to speak with one voice and to be sure that only Jesus gets the credit, which we were all of us wanted to do that anyway. I think that would have been what happened without talking to Eddie. But then he said, why don't you give the money to funeral expenses, to hospital expenses, to counseling? And then Jimmy added, let's establish a fund for violence in the future, because we know that it's such a prevalent thing, especially in Kansas City. And we took that back to the group, and the group was unanimous, just like, yes, that's what we want to do. And just started kind of unfolding. And it made me think, Ray, that, God's always had this blueprint for us. And the blueprint is that the city works together.
Right.
We haven't always followed the blueprint, unfortunately. Especially in our Western culture, it's so individualistic.
Mm-hmm.
But when the group reached out to you and said, "Hey, Ray, would you be willing to be a spokesperson for the group?" What was going through your mind?
Well, with the demands, and I know you understand this, Gary, for our time these days,
Right.
You have to really be selective about what you sign up for, what you we don't get more time. We can get more money and more friends, right. But I didn't have to pray about it. I knew it was the right thing to do. In my spirit, I knew that this was something that I wanted to be in, and I wanted to share with as many people as possible. And so, and again, here's something else that people don't realize of why I feel like we came together so quickly. Gary, I got a great relationship with you and Belinda, your wife, and same thing with Jimmy and so many of the other people who got included on that original text thread, these churches and pastors and nonprofit leaders. It's not like you were reaching out to a stranger. I immediately trust you and trusted the people who were wanting to do this. I knew it was the right thing to do. And I was willing to just set aside whatever in my day to help get this going and help do whatever I could. So I was elated. In the midst of the grief that I still felt, I knew, okay, this is our chance to do something impactful, something that will send a message more than, hey, you're in our thoughts and prayers. So,
right. Ray, when I was thinking about you as a spokesperson, I was thinking about the way that Unite KC was created in the beginning. And I think that we had a lot of different ideas for Unite KC and what it could become. And it has become many of those already, especially being able to knit together the sectors of our culture and to realize that every one of those has an important impact to make when it comes to our city flourishing. Like our city doesn't really flourish if these sectors don't work together.
Right.
And wherever they don't, there'll be a lack. And we were placed in that position as leader, and I felt like that was right then. And I thought, it's for such a time as this. It's a sad time in many ways, and you hate for a tragedy to take place ever. But if a tragedy does take place, you want something good to come out of it. You want love to win. You want a story of the church working together to have the last word. And I really felt like God had really orchestrated all of that preparation time over the years to come together in kind of a crescendo here at this point of need. And what's it been like speaking to the press and, in a sense, kind of speaking for the Big C Church of Kansas City?
Well, as you know, and I was actually kind of taken a little bit by surprise, but during that same day,
you didn't ask for that job. You were asked to do the job.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because during that day, one of the biggest things that we did was start to put together these frequently asked questions that we knew people would ask.
Right.
And we got done, and then I went about my day, and then I remember talking to Shannon, who is our marketing director at United KC, and I said, I've really got to get you involved in some of this stuff, you and some of the other leaders and stuff. And she just kind of chuckled, and she goes, well, you were voted to do this. And I go, what are you talking about? Well, I didn't see the last piece of the
oh my goodness
questions. and I saw that they had elected you and I to be spokespersons, because we're not active pastors. I mean, I know you've been a pastor before. I have never been one, and I'm still praying that God keeps it that way. He's in charge. But
you're a pastor, brother.
I keep hearing that every time I say that.
You just don't get paid.
I just don't get paid, and it's a lot of people that I don't know, so it's kind of funny. But it's very humbling, but at the same time, you don't want to say the wrong thing. You don't want to misrepresent so many people that you know and love and that are counting on you. And more importantly, if you're trying to do something for the city, you want the city not to get distracted with something that you might, if you accidentally go off on a tangent. So I was really, again, it's for such a time as this. I remember all of this corporate training I got and practicing in front of the mirror and trying to get rid of my uhs and all the other things that you do when you're a public speaker.
Well, I think they did a pretty good job then.
Well, you know what? Sometimes they say, you just got to beat it into some people. So it was very humbling. I was very cognizant. I prayed every time we had an opportunity to speak to the public and to the press. They were very kind. The cutting room floor was kind to us as well. So, because but these are even the press. I'm telling you, Gary, here in Kansas City, if you're kind to the press, if you show them respect, they're going to be kind to you. And so we've got great relationships as well as you, I know, have great relationships with the press here. And so it worked out well. I think we got our message out. And I just hope that, again, we made both together, because you had as many of those to do as I did, that we made the Big C Church proud and Kansas City proud as well.
Yeah. And I think the story will continue to unfold. You did a good job. I was really happy that they went and filmed the one that they did for you, of you at Westside, because it showed
Yes.
a church behind you. So it gave more of the sense that you were speaking for a church, because it actually showed one, that was full of people that day, because it was on a Sunday.
Right.
For people who might
was good.
Yeah, for people who might be listening and they don't know the story, by noon of that day, we were able to get up a DAF, a donor advised fund at National Christian Foundation. And Jimmy Dodd asked them, Matt Farmer and his team there, to kind of waive some of the protocols that they typically have so it could be done quickly, because we felt like this was unfolding on a Thursday. We felt like that we needed to ask the churches of Kansas City by the end of the day, or if they didn't have a day like Friday, to talk to their staff, they wouldn't be able to take an offering on Sunday.
Right.
So we felt like it was important to have the details for that fund. And so Matt Farmer and National Christian worked really hard to put together a fund that we named the Church Loves Kansas City. And that got done by 2 or 3 o'clock. I drafted a letter, Jimmy edited it, which was fun. He did a great job.
Yes. And, I want to point out too, people may not know this. We got more done in 2 days than, I mean, if you would have asked me to put a project plan together, I would have thought it would have taken 2 weeks.
I agree.
And we got more done in 2 days, which just goes to show you how well everyone worked together and how generous they were with their time and subsequently with their treasure. And we got that out before.
We got the letter written by 3:30.
That's right.
And then someone said, you guys need a website. And so I called up Lisa Kerwin, who does the website for Love KC. She also does Underground. And I've worked with Lisa for years over at Westside, where she was the communication instructor for years. And I asked her, I knew it was a big ask, because it basically requires her to set aside everything she's doing to do this. And she said, well, let me think through what that would take. About half an hour, I didn't hear from her. And then she wrote back to say, it's already up.
It was crazy. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. Yeah. So she put it up, and, we made just a few tweaks, but she was 90% dead on before I ever looked at it. Mm-hmm. And so we had the website up. Then we could put the website in the note and send it out to 50. Jimmy had a list of 1,500 pastors that, and then he gave the green light to anyone could use the same letter to their list. And so it got out by Thursday night at 10 o'clock. There was a fund, a website, a letter, an invitation with a plan. And we were writing press releases the next day and meeting on Saturday to answer all the questions that we heard that came in after that. But yeah, it was a lot. But I really believe that God will use this, Ray, on into the future. I know there's some plans for things that are still out there as possibilities, and that could be maybe our next podcast as we talk about what some of those could be. But I've heard from the Catholic Church, I've heard from house churches, I've heard from large churches, I've heard from small churches, I've heard from churches that might be considered liberal, I've heard from some that are definitely conservative. And we've served 5 people. I've gotten emails from 5 different people that we've been able to serve so far. I believe there'll be more. I know that Jimmy has been in contact with the family, Lisa, and Lisa's family, and Lisa Lopez Galvin. Do I have that right?
That's correct.
And her family has been very gracious, and I believe we're going to be able to serve them in caring for these funeral expenses. And I'm sure that there'll be other hospital expenses. I've already talked to 2 people about counseling expenses. So this is happening, brother.
Yes. And it's, again, so much work and so much cooperation. That's another key thing. The cooperation for everybody who, they're as busy as we are, Gary, and they just set aside their time and they did all this stuff. I mean, Lisa is just, Lisa Kerwin, is one of the people that she just really stepped up. And Jimmy, it was so refreshing to see Jimmy Dodd, who is, as you guys know, is the CEO of Pastor Serve. He just stepped right into the role that he's perfectly suited for. He was there with the family. He's visited them several times, gotten to know them, and created a genuine bond with Lisa Galvin's with their family, and in which they have a large, loving family, as I'm told. And so as we start to move into, what's next, like you said, we've already served 5 families plus Lisa's family. We're going to continue to get the outpouring of those funds, which was way more than I expected in such a short amount of time, to other victims. And then in the future, since Kansas City is still struggling with and looking for solutions, and I believe we're finding them with groups like the 360 and KC Common Good, and so we're partnering with those folks to make sure that Kansas City is a safer place. It's crime free. Our numbers were down, ironically, from year over year, and then we had this happen, and it's just. Even though the numbers are what they are, you just get a sense of, man, that really hurt us. But we're not gonna lay down our weapons against this evil that seems to be in our city. And so in the future, as you had alluded to, there's going to be funds that are available for future families and victims of violence here, so that we can continue to do some good. To help people in these really tight and tough situations.
Yeah, some of the good that's already been ongoing, Ray, and this too, has been, it's moms who've lost sons, banding together and saying, this just can't continue. And so some of these groups that are boots on the ground have been in this battle for a long time. There's no desire to recreate the wheel here. They already have a good run at it. You mentioned 2 groups that will definitely help, KC Common Good and 360 KC. They're already at the table. They've been meeting weekly on this issue, and they're underfunded. And so we believe we'll be able to help them with some funding that can move this initiative forward. And I'm excited that when the Big C Church comes together, we do something together that none of us could do alone. And I think that's a really important message to continue to lift up to our city. Anything else? Go ahead.
I was just going to a quick tagline, we're better together. And that seems to permeate all across the country. When we work together, we always can do more.
Absolutely. Well, there's a lot of other people in this story. You and I have had this conversation, and people will watch it. Maybe they'll know a few more of the details, and they probably wonder, how did that happen? They'll have a little bit more insight now. And if they don't know Ray Jarrett, they need to know Ray Jarrett. But anyway, I'm excited for the fact that this could be a new day for us. There's a friend that I met named Tommy Rosen who leads, it's called Houston Responds. And I've met Tommy. I've probably had 2 long conversations with him, and he's talked to me about how that with the floods in Houston years ago, it brought the Big C Church together in ways that had never come together before. And they've only built on that in the time from then till now. Like, it's continued to grow and continued to grow. It's gotten better and better. Their relationships have deepened. One of the things that happened there is that the city started to trust the church because in many cases, the church was more able to do boots on the ground kind of work than the city was able to hire or do on its own. It just really wasn't ready to respond. But the church was ready. It was nimble. It was quick. It was by one day, the church was there helping. And so I've carried that in my heart from the conversations with Tommy, and thought, this can happen in Kansas City too. Like, we can get better and better, and we can show up and make differences that cause the city to go, you know what, we need the church. It does remind me, this is maybe the pastor part coming out, Ray, where Jesus said, by this will all men know that you're my disciples, by the way that you love one another. So he also said, if I be lifted up, I'll draw all men to myself. And I know he was speaking about the cross, But I think that these scriptures give us guidance to step into this city space, and it's happening.
You're absolutely right, Gary. I can't agree with you more about the timeliness of the church being able to respond, because honestly, we could have all done the thing that we do when we hear about one person was killed in Roland Park, or one person was
right,
attacked here or wherever, and we just go, "Oh Lord, that is so horrible." Your kingdom come, your will be done. Those kinds of things. But I really am proud of the church in Kansas City for coming together like this at such a time as this, because I think that, again, as you had just spoken, ongoing support needs to be given for these organizations and people, until we feel like that we've got a really great handle on this problem. I mean, I was so shocked, and I'll mention this and I'll let you talk again, but I remember looking at some numbers when I first started investigating, crime and in Kansas City. And I was looking at all these other cities, and then I looked at Detroit and what their numbers were. But right across the river in Canada, which, I mean, it's just, you could see it from, if anybody who's been there, I think in one year they might have had, I can't remember the year, but there might have been 3 in a whole city that's right there. And so I know it can be done. I'm not an expert at what all the problems are, but I do want to be a part of the solution. So,
that's great encouragement.
Mm-hmm.
We have a similar situation that's happened in Omaha, Ray, and maybe you know a little bit about the story, but it has a 15-year history, so it didn't happen overnight. But the church has worked with the city, and they've reduced the number of fatalities, the number of victims significantly. Now, whatever figures I say, I'll probably be wrong because I won't remember them exactly. But it was startling how low the crime has fallen since they began to work together and apply some of the different tactics that they've applied. And prayer, by the way, I've heard them talk about this personally. Prayer was really a big part of that. And I believe it is a spiritual battle. Like we're doing all of these other things that we're doing, but the church coming together to stand against principalities and powers and spiritual wickedness in heavenly places is part of the answer. And we don't ever want to forget that. And it's probably the most powerful weapon that we have, the church praying, and should be our first, priority, not our last result.
That's right. That's right. There's a wonderful book that was written about the spiritual history of Kansas City.
Spiritual roots of Kansas City.
You probably had something to do with that.
No.
Yeah.
It is a wonderful book, though.
Oh, it is. And when we talk about our organizations, Love KC and Unite KC, we realize that it's been built on this foundation of prayer.
I think about that all the time.
Yeah. So it's not that we're so great or anything. That's the ideas are so ground shattering. It's just that this successive levels of prayer and trying to stand against the history of violence in Kansas City, I think, bring it to a point where we can do something like this, and use the model, the Omaha 360 model. You mentioned that. There's meetings every week to try to see what we can do to eliminate crime in our area. So,
Annika Bergen, with Bill High's encouragement and support, wrote the book, The Spiritual Roots of Kansas City. I mean, all of us stand on the shoulders of, people who've gone before us. And I'm so inspired to read stories, that are 100 years old. And then I think of even my own experience when I got to Kansas City. I didn't have any idea about things like this. And Gary Smits took me under his wing and began to teach me about prayer. And I wasn't even very good at praying personally in those days. And he coached me and helped me until I began to kind of have a love for the private places, the secret place, I think is the word he used.
Right.
But Yeah, there's a lot to be done in that area, but I believe it's a powerful privilege God gives us. And wouldn't it be cool if, Kansas City's been known as Tom's Town, the mafia gang was here for years and probably still is at some level. But and there are definitely other gangs that are here. But
right.
What if by God's grace, the battle turns to where our city is known for the peace and the shalom. Jeremiah says, pray for the shalom of your city, for if it prospers, you too will prosper. And that'd be beautiful if the story is told years in the future that this turned around to the place where it's one of the safest cities in the U.S. I think that should be our goal.
Yes, for sure.
Well, thank you, Ray, for your time today. And this is going to unfold, I'm sure. We need to have you back for part 2 later where we tell the rest of the story. But thank you so much for your role in stepping into this need and also going forward. I'm just privileged to be in the journey with you, brother.
Hey, and thank you, Gary. It's not just our friendship, but it's the purpose of it. And I am overjoyed to do this with you, to do this ministry and to do this work. So thank you. And thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a privilege. Jimmy Dodd has big plans for us too.
I know he does. They're always big.
He's got some things cooking in the background that we're not ready to talk about.
Yeah, I saw him. I'm like, Lord, you got to start cloning me. You said you would.
That's amazing. I did see a movie about that once. It didn't work out that well.
No, yeah. Yes, it worked out. I know which movie you're talking about. That didn't turn out well at all.
Right. Well, God bless you, Ray. And thank you so much. If you're watching the Blessed podcast here, feel free to share it with others. And if you're telling them where to find it, you can find it on the Love KC group page, Living on Mission, the Facebook group. You can find it on the YouTube page, Love KC Today. And you can find it on Apple Podcast and Google Play and several other platforms. But feel free to share it so that all of us can find the calling that God has for us and live on mission and follow God, join him in what he's already doing. God bless you. Thanks for joining.
That's it for this episode of the Blessed Podcast. We hope this podcast informed and encouraged you. Remember to subscribe on your favorite format, iTunes, Google Play, or YouTube. If you want to see the interview on Zoom, hop over to our Love KC Living on Mission Facebook group. Have a blessed day.